Good morning, everybody. Happy Wednesday. Hopefully everybody is enjoying the weather. And we're looking forward today talking to David Gazarian from the IQ Mortgage about the 30-year fixed mortgages being the best hedge against the inflation. We also received a few questions in the DMs between the sessions, so we will be addressing the question of the difference between the percentage rate and APR. Hello, good morning, everybody. So we will be addressing that. As always, we'll be addressing the interest rate. Thank you so much. You have a great day too, Bruno. And thank you for watching. If you have any questions, you're more than welcome to send them over. And we have David joining us. So let's talk today about the 30 years fixed mortgage being the best hedge against the inflation. And as we're waiting for David to join us, sorry guys, we're not the most technically sufficient or efficient people. Send your questions over on anything that has to do with the mortgage, anything that has to do with the market. As your trusted real estate advisor, I will remind you that we are still in the era of extremely low inventory, guys. The Las Vegas inventory is very low. For the last 7 days, we actually gained like 900 listings, but we also closed on 800 and change, and we also put 600 into the contract. What it means that our absorption rate, or the rate with which the properties are getting sold and going under the contract, are actually way higher than the speed with which the new listings coming out to the market. And David is here. Let me did I not press the button properly? Swear to God, I'm trying to do it. There we go.
Alexandra, good morning.
David. Good
How are you
morning. Doing great. How are you doing?
I'm doing okay. Let me get the lights. Excuse me 1 second.
Sure.
All right, better. Okay. Yeah, I apologize. I tried to join through the browser so I could show my screen, but it wouldn't let me join you. So
That's okay.
came back to the phone.
Get to their usual.
Yeah.
Yes, you and I are yet to discover all the ins and outs of the lives and all the tools that we can and cannot use.
I have this tool that we just came up with. I'm so excited to talk about this, but it's something that you and I will have to plan for, and so I'm not only talking about it, but also.
I think we lost David, and the tool that he was talking about, we will probably do a separate Zoom call so he can actually share the screen, because this is something that him and I have not figured out yet, how to share our screens on Instagram Live. So we'll figure it out for you guys. And David is probably getting one of the calls and forgot to put his phone on to the do not disturb. There we go.
I'm back.
Good. Did you get to take a mortgage application while we were
It,
missing you?
it just dropped me. I don't know what it was. I'm not touching anything. Yeah, let's talk about this. I know you have some really exciting questions that are important, and this video will live on our feeds, and hopefully it'll bring value to people for some time to come. So your questions are quite evergreen. So, yeah.
Excellent. So if somebody has the patience to get to this moment, then the very first question that we got asked in the DM is the difference between the percentage rates and APR. Because
APR.
when you get the disclosure and you see those two numbers, why are there two numbers and how to interpret them?
Those two numbers, it's very important to understand, are there to protect the client. Okay, so the percentage rate, just the rate, is what you shop for, is what your monthly payment's going to be based on. So the rate is what's important for the rest of your mortgage life. However long you're going to keep this mortgage, the rate is very, very important. Okay, so when you borrow a $400,000 or $300,000 loan, your monthly payment is going to be calculated based on the rate, not based on the APR. Now, to differentiate, what is an APR? APR is an indicator, a blend of rates that adds closing costs, loan costs, not all closing costs, loan costs to the rate. So if you have a 400,000, let's think of the rate. The rate is an X amount of dollars that you're borrowing at an X amount of rate. In your payments, a Y or whatever. The APR is your loan amount plus your loan cost, which is going to be underwriting cost, a whole bunch of like junk fees. A bunch of lenders include notary fees, all that stuff, right? And that's amortized over a 30-year period. So now your APR is slightly higher than your rate. And the reason the government, let me just say this, the reason the government came up with the APR is to be able to help people with one number differentiate between different quotes that people shop for. Does that make sense? It's all you got to do is compare the APR. You'll be good. You'll be safe.
So when we're talking about percentage rate is this is what you actually pay month to month. And APR actually includes that percentage rate plus the costs that you paid upfront, correct? Because
loan costs.
You're not paying, yes, you're not effectively paying the APR. APR is that amount that you already paid, like the closing costs that you pay upfront. You're paying them on the day of closing.
That's correct.
So you're not actually paying the APR every month after the closing. You're paying the percentage rate. You're paying your PR. But for you, if you wanted to break that number down, the total that you paid to obtain that mortgage, that will be the APR, correct? You will need the APR to calculate that.
So APR is something by the law that we have to disclose to people. But again, APR is irrelevant once your loan is closed. APR is there and it's in place by the government because there's still quite predatory lending going on, and I'm not going to name any big names such as Quicken, but it doesn't matter when they quote something and people not being to understand the loan estimate and the fees that they're paying for this attractive rate on page 2 of the loan estimate, which let's say you're refinancing and you're paying $7,000, so many $7,000, $10,000, $12,000 to buy down that rate. So people don't pay attention to that because it's coming out of their home equity, but you're effectively paying for it. It's coming out of your net worth, right? All people pay attention to is that interest rate. The rate is low, I'm good. So the government said, you know what, if you're just going to look at one number and you want to, reduce your efforts in the shopping process and bring it down to one number, then don't look at the percentage rate, because that could be manipulated by adding a whole bunch of fees, loan fees on the second page of the loan estimate. Why don't you look at the APR, because the APR must include all of those fees. So APR is effectively a shopping tool. Once your mortgage is closed, your monthly payment will be calculated on the percentage rate, not the APR.
So let me repeat it to make sure that I understand you correctly. So
Yeah.
the APR is an extremely important number only at the point when we're shopping for the loan. If
Correct.
we're there sitting at the table comparing the loan quotes from different lenders,
Yes.
APR would be one of the main numbers that we're looking at, because that APR is going to reflect the closing costs. And if any of the lenders can actually, like, let's say, be shady about the fees, how they charge it, or, you know, like not be very vocal about the fees that are being charged through the loan, they will still have to reflect those fees in the APR. Excellent. Because I know, like, I've been doing my refinance not that long ago, and I did, you know, like, I did get a proposal from a big name banker, you know, to get the lowest rate, and they sure enough bid any rate that anybody else was offering by, you know, like by the whole percent. But sure enough, after I go through the after I go through the process and get my first disclosure, and I do have this horrible habit of reading the documents before I sign them. I read them for my clients, I read them for myself as well. So I look at that estimate and I see that in reality, I was buying down 1.5 points.
See?
So my closing costs on my refinance, and guys, like, don't quote us on the numbers because it's all strictly individual, but your refinance on a house of like $500,000 should not cost you more than $4,000. Would I be correct, David? Like,
Well, I'm not going to say that, honestly, yes, because the closing costs also include such factors as the property taxes on homeowners insurance. The home could be old, insurance is going to be expensive. Property taxes, it could have a big land. So I could
not quote
do a
the
gross
number,
estimate.
but
Yeah.
I would tell you this. Why did I pay attention to this number, and why did I know? You know, like that number was too high. I knew that because I deal with the loan docs and I deal with the closing costs on a day-to-day basis. So when I saw my closing costs for the refinance being higher than the closing costs for some of my clients who were purchasing, like obtaining the loan, and guys, these are not two of the same things. When you're getting your initial loan, like your first loan,
Right,
it is way higher it's going to be way higher on the closing cost than your refinance. And this is how I knew that the numbers were wrong. I started to look into the numbers, and sure enough, I found that I was like the low interest rate that they actually caught my attention with was based on the fact that I myself was paying down that interest rate. And guys, this is something that you need to know. You know, like when you're shopping around and some lender is going to tell you, oh, come over here, I'm going to give you the low interest rate. You know, like there's no such a thing as like broker A is shopping in one mortgage store, you know, like where the interest rates are like 5%, and at the same time, the rest of the mortgage brokers are shopping in the other store where the interest rates are at 7%. No, it doesn't really work like that. Everybody shops at the same government rate. So if somebody is giving you extremely low rate, you need to ask the questions and you need to see those disclosures. So for that reason alone, you need to look at that APR. And I hope that we answered that question. If there's anything else that we need to break down for the APR versus PR question, please let us know.
yes.
But we do have our main topic that we promised to discuss today is how the 30-year mortgage is the hedge against the inflation, and why you would want to have mortgage, why would you want to have a debt with the fixed interest rates in the time like today when we have an extremely high inflation rates?
That's awesome question, and it's the 30-year mortgage with all of its, I know we're going to have a ton of comments. Oh, what about the 2008 housing crisis? What about 2022 when prices dropped? We will have those people that will make those comments, and that's okay. I'm happy to address them as well. But at the end of the day, the 30-year fixed mortgage, what it really means is you're borrowing a fixed amount of money for the 30 years, which means if you close your mortgage in 2023, your last payment will be made in 2053, and your payments are not going to increase. What will increase is the price of your home, okay? Even if housing market stays the same, the fact that there is inflation, the government shoots for 2 to 3% inflation, okay, this means that the price of your home should inflate as well. It has to. I just don't remember that the last 40 years housing has appreciated, including the 2008 dip, about 4% per year. So even if it appreciates at a lower than 4%, say 2 to 3%, you're still going to be way ahead when you own something and you pay the same mortgage payment for the next 30 years. Now, no one's going to stay in the house. We understand you're going to upgrade your home. But what if you were to rent this house? Which means your rent is going to appreciate year after year. In Clark County, your rent appreciates 4 years. So everything sort of trails back to the inflation, very close number. So 3 to 4% is your rent appreciation in Clark County. That's what I saw in a study done. So if you move out into a different home, you're still going to collect more rent, and your cash flow is going to increase year after year. Just like if you're a tenant right now and you're renting, and your landlord increases your rent 3 to 4% every year. So, what doesn't matter whether you keep this house or you rent it and upgrade, your payment is not going up. It's going to be the same. And that's about the only thing that's guaranteed not to go up in the next 30 years. So I just don't know any other instrument, any other liability that is not going to go up.
And so most experts say that during the time of the high inflation, the best thing that you can do is to have debt. And why would you do that? And you would do that because what is inflation? Inflation is technically a depreciation of the buying power of the dollar that you have. And so when we were like years before, up to 2022, we were in the inflation period where our inflation was under 2%. So everybody, and this is where you guys hear that, oh, everybody was making money on real estate. Yes, everybody was, because your home was appreciating. Our median appreciation in the valley is between 6 to 8% in Clark County. Okay. So if your house appreciates 6 to 8% per year and the inflation is, let's say, 3%, then you're winning. You're winning. Plus, if you have a 3% interest rate on your mortgage and the inflation is 3%, then you're breaking even, because your money is depreciating with the same speed that you're paying the interest rate. Mm-hmm. So you're catching up right there. Besides, you get to write off that interest at the end of the year, so you're catching up on those 3% as well. Now you're actually adding on into your pocket. Now, what happens if you have $100,000 in your bank, sitting in your bank, like in your savings account, for a year with the inflation of 6%? It means that next year it's still going to be $100,000, but what you can buy for that money is going to be 6% less of the goods or services than it was on January 1 of the previous year.
So if you can buy $100,000 of toilet paper this year, you'll be able to buy $94,000 of toilet paper next year.
Absolutely. Or you're going to buy, only 94 rolls, Like instead of 100 rolls, you will be only be able to buy 94 rolls.
And that number
a
keeps
year after
rolling
that,
year after year.
exactly, it keeps depleting. So I'm pretty sure that every one of us, if you think really hard, you know somebody who resides in California and owns a property in California. Now, I want you to think about somebody who is, let's say, 70 or 80 plus. So think of that person, and if they own the property, they will probably tell you that somewhere in 70s or 80s, they bought that house that is worth right now, maybe 2.5, maybe $3 million. They will tell you they bought it at like $50,000 to $80,000. And this is exactly what happens. This is like the best way to think about the inflation and to think about what the inflation does with the money compared to your fixed rate mortgage payment. So when you buy a house, let's say in 80s, you bought your house in 80s for $100,000 and you have a fixed interest rate and you keep on paying the same payment no matter what. Your principal and interest stays the same, but the buying power of the money depletes year after year, after year. And there is actually an extremely cool tool that you can find on the internet, and I'm going to put the link in the description to this video. It is the calculator that calculates when you buy a house, like when you pay the mortgage, you can put in your interest rate, and then you can put in approximate, like inflation rate, and you will see how buying $350,000 house with the inflation, with the interest rate of 4% and the inflation rate of 4% per year, you're going to end up paying $280,000 for this house. Why? Because your money will adjust. And that's why having a debt during the high inflation time is actually a good thing. I'm not talking about the adjusted interest rates. I'm talking about the fixed interest rate. If your fixed interest rate, even if it is higher than the current inflation rate, even if your fixed interest rate is higher than the inflation rate, fixed interest rate helps you to hedge your money against the inflation. And if you have that debt against the asset that also appreciates, you can actually compound the two factors. You're saving your money on the debt that you pay is actually depreciating year after year, plus if you can write off that interest and your asset is appreciating, you're getting a compound interest.
So I think once you and I figure out how to share my screen, we'll actually start demonstrating and do some series on my wealth accumulator, and all of those things are there.
I love
plus
that
more, plus more, because this morning my programmer came up with rent versus own as well, which is huge. It's going to be huge for homeowners. It's going to be huge for realtors, I think, even more. So you and I need to do some exploring, and our education classes need to get more in depth, more factual, so we can show certain facts and logic and mathematics behind what we're saying. But I think, Alexandra, is also, we need to mention that we're not licensed investment advisors. So this is just our opinion. We're not telling anyone to do anything. This is how we think based on our experience.
With you. This is how we think. This is how we interpret the data that we're blessed to be exposed to year after year. But now that you mentioned rent, I would like to talk about it as well. Yeah. So when we're talking about the inflation, what is inflation? Inflation is inflation is the rate at which the price of the goods increases. So when you buy something and it is not tangible, it is not an asset, such as when you buy an apple, when you buy a roll of toilet paper. You just spend that money and you pretty much dispose of it and it goes nowhere. So same thing happens with the rent. So rent is when you buy something that is not an asset. You just buy the time of being in the property. Right. So when the inflation goes up, the rent is going to go up as well. But there's no asset behind it. So your rent rate is going to go up. And so because the landlord's money is depreciating just as much as yours. And so that what happens here is like same thing. If your roll of toilet paper was $3 or was $10 on January 1st, correct? On December 31st, with the 6% inflation, it's going to be $10.60.
It also depends on what kind of contract you've signed and what your contract says the subsequent increases in your rent are going to be.
Correct. But what happens is that with the inflation, the cost of the same good, like the cost of the same thing, is going to be higher at the end of the year because it will be adjusted for the inflation. So same thing, the cost of your rent will be adjusted for the inflation. And because there's no fixed, because there's no asset and there's no fixed amount that you pay, at least for the, like there's no fixed interest that you pay, you're going to pay higher and higher rent every single year. That's how it works because there's no asset and there's no write-off behind it. There's no asset, there's no appreciation, there's no write-off behind your rent. And that's why when you're doing this calculation and when you're doing this comparing, the comparison between own to rent, yes, maybe on the year 1, 2, 3, and 4, it would look like, oh, you're actually saving a little bit more money. But when you compound this inflation, appreciation, and the write-off on the interest, I think, David, am I right? Around year 4, you're you're crossing the line.
It all depends on the biggest factor. There's many factors in that algorithm. The biggest factor is how you think the home is going to appreciate in the future. Now, you said 68%. I always thought that 7 to 10% is the appreciation we've had in Las Vegas the last decade.
It depends on the area.
I'm going to take your number. You're the professional in this. So 6 to 8%. When I do my calculations in my wealth accumulator, I put 4%. And most common year is year number 4, that you are actually saving money continuing to rent for the first 4 years. Your rent is going to be cheaper than the mortgage. And this is, again, my office manager, Andre, my approval manager. He was like, well, the clients are saying rent is cheaper. Why would they buy? And I'm like, okay, that's a good question, because there's so many gurus out there, so many billionaires out there. They're like, continue renting, do not own your home, and go invest that somewhere else. Well, let's think about this, because it's such a crock of, you know what, like it's not true, but no one's been able to calculate this. All they do is they look at that 1 month of rent versus mortgage difference, and that's just not how it works. So once we built out the wealth accumulator, in most cases, if you plug in 3 to 4% appreciation per year, you're going to see that you're ahead for the first 3 years. You're saving more with the rent to mortgage difference. And in year 4, your accumulated equity in the home surpasses the savings that you've made renting a home. And that's year 4 for the rest of your life. Don't forget that. That's for the rest of your life. So you may at some point want to forego the first 2-3 years of savings, because knowing that in year 4 till the rest of your life, you will be making more equity, I'll be happy to talk to anyone about this. Unless you're planning on moving to Bulgaria in the next 3 years, which I do have those clients, then I have no argument. Continue renting. There's no reason for you to own a home in the United States. If you're planning on living the rest of your life in this country, you need to own something.
And I totally agree with you. And I agree with the fact that real estate is a long-term investment. And I 100% agree. When I have the primary consultation with our buyers, I ask them, what is your, like, what is your short-term plan? What is your long-term plan? What are you, like, what are your family plans in 3 years? What are your family plans in 5 years? And I know that it's like people would say, oh my God, it is so unpredictable right now. Like, I don't know where I'm going to be tomorrow. I understand it. I understand it, but guys, here's what happens. If you know that you're relocating for work, like every 12 to 24 months, understandable. Okay, guys, don't buy. Probably the rent is your option and the best option for you, unless you're getting a killer deal, because if you buy and sell, like if you buy and sell like once a year, it is really hard unless you're flipping. Like that's not that's not where you can make the money. Real estate is a long-term investment. And I agree with David when you were saying that, like let's say you have $100,000 that you can invest. Like, of course, if there's a business that gives you 25% return on investment, like go for it. Go for it. Like if you're not scared of that being such a risky deal, go for it. But if you're putting $100,000 into a house that you're planning to occupy and that you're planning to, to hold for at least 2 years, you need to remember this. After 2 years and 1 day, if you're a single person and you sell the house and the appreciation of that house is another $100,000, that money is tax-free because you get to save up to $250,000 appreciation. You get to save on taxes because it is your primary residence. If you are a married couple, after 2 years and 1 day, you get to not pay income tax or capital gain tax. I'm sorry, not the income tax, capital gain tax on the amount up to $500,000. Now, can you name any business in this country where you would gain $500,000 and not pay any capital gain tax? If somebody can, please go ahead and comment. Please enlighten me. But this is something that people don't take into the equation. This is something that people don't think about. You don't think about the interest rate that you get to write off on your taxes. And I know that right now it's a super busy tax season, but I know that David will bring his tax partners, into one of our calls here shortly once the crazy tax season is over, so we could break down for you all the numbers, how it works, how you write off depreciation, how you write off the interest rate, and all the tax benefits of owning the property. Because remember, like, you don't become rich by saving. It is impossible.
No. That's so true.
Yeah, you're like trying to save. It's like trying to bring water in a bucket that is full of holes. Like no matter how much and how fast you pour into that bucket, if it has holes, and right now, like, what is our inflation rate? 6.8?
6 actually.
Yeah,
according
6.
to the CPI index. There's other indexes.
So according to the CPI index, we have 6 holes in our bucket right now.
Yeah,
Take it
and
this
the government
way,
is targeting 2 holes in the bucket.
Exactly.
I
So
like that.
this is
I like that
the
actually.
yeah, and like this is how, like this is how I hope that this visual, like every time you think about it, like trying to save water when you have a hole is not going to, like is not going to work.
Yeah,
And so I hope
awesome.
that we answered, like I hope that we answered our question. Is there anything else, David, that you would like to add? Is there a new tool? Is there a new tool or a new mortgage program that we need to hear about today?
Okay, I mention about I think last week I mentioned about the employer verification of employment program where the boss could fill out just one sheet of paper, just one simple sheet of paper, and we could get a mortgage for a client with 20% down. So I'm really excited. I think I'd mentioned this, that we had a whole bunch of alternative programs for self-employed people. We had nothing. For the longest time, we had nothing, no alternative program for the W-2 because W-2 is your W-2. You make what you make but it's really not true, especially in Las Vegas when your tips are a tiny fraction of what you really make. Okay. And as long as you can have one of your bosses, a supervisor, the company owner, the restaurant owner, the bookkeeper, it doesn't matter, any official with the business, fill out a form and just on one simple line, put the total aggregate amount of your earnings. This includes your Venmo, your cash, your corn, your chocolate, everything you get paid. Put that in there and I can use that for a mortgage. Very, very powerful. As long as you have 20% down, you've got decent credit. I think over 660 or 680, we should be able to get you a mortgage, even if your true earnings do not reflect on your W-2. I am excited. This is a valuable addition to our plethora of our mortgages that we offer.
One of the questions that we have, how long does it take to go through the mortgage? So there's really no answer to fit it all because your application will be individual. But David, you go ahead, answer this question, and then I will add something from our personal experience.
So the question's not very specific to go through the mortgage. So let's understand what that is. You apply. Let's say you apply with us or you call us, you have to start the process. The process would be to call us, right? Or just give me your phone number, I'll reach out to you. We're going to go through the pre-qualification process. The pre-qualification process has me taking an application from you and collecting documents from you and us, my approval manager, doing the work and making sure that you qualify. So there's two things that are going to happen. You either qualify today and we'll issue the pre-approval, and you don't qualify, then I'm going to give you a roadmap. You need to do 1, 2, 3 before you can be qualified. And this is where most people fall, unfortunately. And once you go into contract, then it's roughly about 30 days from you going into contract and closing that deal. So again, it depends on what you're specifically asking. Yeah.
No. I'm showing my guys at the office. I'm like, can we not talk about whatever you wanted to talk for the next 15 minutes?
Sure. So,
Yeah.
for example, you and I you have a realtor that works for you at your office, one of your realtors. He referred us a client last week. Extremely qualified people, extremely motivated and qualified. Motivation is important as well because they decided they wanted to buy a house. They reached out to us last June. They weren't ready. They rented. Now they feel they're ready. Okay. So they're motivated because you could call me all day, all you want, but if you're not motivated and my team's going to be calling you, you're not going to answer, then we lose our motivation as well. But if you're motivated, you want to buy a house, we reached out. We spoke with both of them, both spouses, filled out an application over the phone that took less than 10 minutes, sent them a needs list, documents that they had to get over to us. They uploaded all the documents overnight. In the morning, we had the pre-approval. I want to say by 11 a.m., we had the pre-approval. The following day went shopping, and I got the contract in the mail yesterday. So this has been extremely fast, and we'll close this loan in less than a month. That's how it usually is. Number one, how motivated are you? And my team works really quickly. So it really depends on how quickly can you get the documents that we're asking you over to us. If you're ready and we feel certain that your loan's going to close, we'll issue the pre-approval immediately. That takes less than an hour or less than 2 hours. And if there are certain things that you need to do, it really depends on you whether you have the wherewith to stick with the process. So what I tell clients is, I will hold your hand until you get your keys from your realtor. But a lot of times is you're going to let my hand go because you'll feel that this is too expensive, takes too long, and you lose your motivation and life takes over. So it really depends on you is the answer.
And I would say, to add to it, I would say this is not an easy process. This is not an easy process. And, from some clients, I hear that, oh my God, before 2008, it was so easy. Yes, it was. And look what was the result of it. Because it was way too easy, because people needed no motivation. They needed to show no income. And nobody was asking the questions. Right now, all these hurdles that you have to jump through and all those documents that you need to submit, this is actually the outcome of 2008 crisis. This is actually the mechanisms that protect you as the consumer from from the other people defaulting on their homes, from the masses defaulting on their mortgage payments. Because honestly, guys, it's not easy, and it's not going to get easier. It's going to get more and more difficult. Am I correct that every single year we get more rules and regulations? There are additional rules and regulations that are coming out to make the process more tedious, to make sure that you touch on more points.
The government doesn't have a role of making the process tedious. I don't agree with that. But as technology progresses, there's more verifications that are done in the back of what happened, like the verifications, fraud guard, this and that, databases to make sure that the loan is transparent. But having said that, the government's regulations heavily, Fannie, Freddie, FHA, heavily depend on the housing market. So Fannie may come up with rules when they anticipate what's going to happen with the housing market for the next year or two. Okay, so for example, give you a simple example. Second homes, vacation homes, had the same interest rate as primary homes in 2020 and 21. So whether you were buying a second home up in Seattle or in San Diego, your rate would be the same as that of a primary home. Since homes became more, this is my interpretation, when homes became more expensive and unaffordable for people, when inventory shrunk and people weren't able to buy homes for their own use, and this, I think the government had to step in with their best intentions to help people to get primary homes and become homeowners, first-time home buyers. This is when the pricing for second homes flipped. Now it's the same that of investment homes. So, and second homes all of a sudden are not considered primary homes anymore. As far as rates are concerned, they're investment now. And we had a significant drop in people that were looking to buy second homes because it's less affordable now. And this change that Fannie Mae made, this is just an example of how government makes changes that, in their opinion, are going to help people own more homes, because the goal is to have more new families own homes, not investors like you and I own more homes, unfortunately.
That's okay. That's okay. It's still not going to stop, neither you nor I.
Yeah, right.
No, not the thousands of investors all over the country and all over the world. You know, like the fact that it is a little bit more difficult, it's not going to, it's not going to stop people from investing and from trying to be financially free and trying to accumulate wealth for themselves, for their families, for their kids, and for the generations to come. And talking about the speed of approval and going through the process, you and I actually just took a wonderful client of ours through the FHA loan in 18 days, from the beginning to end, from the contract to close.
Okay. Well, let me speak to that. I'm always going to be transparent. I know who you're
Yes.
talking about, and yes, you put him in contract, and we were done in 18 days because we had we had 3 months of preparation. When I met with him was in September. So if we prepare well enough for your application for your mortgage, once you're in contract, the certainty that your loan will close and will close quickly and less painfully goes up. So we like to prepare in our office, and we were prepared for him very, very well. There's not a question that we didn't have an answer to. We submitted a near perfect file to the underwriter and closed that loan. I know which one you're talking about. If it's a close contract, a close of escrow from contract to close, it means there has been lots of preparation before that.
And I'm not encouraging anybody to put 18 days on their contracts.
Don't
Guys,
do
please
that.
hear me correctly. I still put 30 to 45 days. If it's not going to hurt our buyer or purchaser, I am going to put 30 to 45 days on the contract, allowing us to close the loan. But I will definitely communicate openly and communicate a lot with the selling side. And if we're ready in 18 days, believe me, we're going to do everything in our power to close it sooner and to deliver the result to you sooner. And especially, like, honestly, there's a lot of calculation going on, and every day that you close or not close is going to cost you money. And this is what I really love David and his team for, is that they sit down with my buyers and they actually calculate what it's going to cost for the buyer to close at the end of the month, on the 28th or the 30th of the month, and what is going to be the difference of the closing costs if the client has to close in the middle of the month. And that, guys, can make or break the budget, because in this month alone, we managed to save, like, one client, we saved her $2,400 by closing two days earlier. And yes, we had a choice. We had to pay $250 extra in order to save $24. But when we put it on the paper with her, she was like, "Oh my God, Alexandra." She's like, "That's a no-brainer." She's like, "Of course, let's pay $250. Why should we, why should we even think about it twice?" So this is something that we do in the background, and this is something when you work with the experienced realtor, with the experienced loan officer, this is the level of service that you should get. We don't expect you to understand it from the get-go. We don't expect you to be an expert unless you're trying to join either my field or David's field. Then we welcome you. Come join our teams. We'll teach you everything we know. But if you are looking at it from the standpoint of the consumer, please go ahead, ask your questions and let us explain to you. Let us break it down for you on a piece of paper, answering why we suggest closing at a certain date, why we suggest going a certain route, because our main goal is for you, A, to become a homeowner, B, to get the best property with the best loan, with the best interest rates on the best terms that there are at the moment you're shopping. And if the terms are like today, nobody can argue with me. Interest rates are super high. So these are not the best terms. Should it stop you from becoming a homeowner? Absolutely not. Become a homeowner while the interest rates are high, because by the time the interest rate's gonna fluctuate and go down, you will already be homeowner, and your price is going to be fixed, because you're going to buy that house and negotiate with that seller today. And a year from now, you're going to take the advantage of the appreciation and the advantage of the rate going down. And in fact, David and his team, and I keep repeating it to my clients, I'm like, guys, they know what what is the rate that you close with. So you don't need to, you don't need to panic and think that, oh my God, how do I know that the interest rate is down? Or how do I know that it is beneficial for me to refinance? And I always give them the same answer. You'll hear a call from David and his team. They're going to call you and they're going to tell you, it is the time. It is your individual time. The interest rate is low enough that it makes it beneficial for you and your family to refinance your home.
Yes, we actually have a technology in place, Alexandra, that every loan that gets closed, Tasia, our loan partner, she inputs everything into a system that sort of babysits this loan. And we basically monitor, I want to say 119 different banks. And the threshold I have set in the system is 0.5%. So as soon as the market drops 0.5%, your 7.5% rate becomes 7. You get an email, I get an even before we even wake up in the morning. So that's when we, because the market's open at 5 o'clock our time on the East Coast. So we have a trigger now. We automatically monitor so many banks that wouldn't be possible for you to monitor. And you get an email, and I tell people not to refinance at the very first chance. When we see, this is important to understand, when we see rates dropping, which will happen sometime this year, I think at the end of this year, maybe.
You mean the downtrend?
Downtrend. It could be early next year, but it's going to happen, I think, later this year. It'll start. It's going to be a very long slope, very shallow, angled, low slope. It'll probably take 6 to 8 months. Don't jump at the first opportunity to refinance. Once rates start sliding, they're going to stay there for quite some time, for years. So in our industry, we'll try to catch you at several times. We'll try to refinance you at 7 and then 6.5 and 6 and 5.5. And don't do that. You're paying closing costs, which gets added to your loan amount. It basically depletes your equity. Don't do that. Just wait. Be patient. Wait 6 months. Do that one refinance. Spend closing cost 1. Get that lowest rate possible. And
be happy.
Hold the mortgage. Yeah, be happy. Just hold it as long as possible, because now you've got certain savings with your high rate and the low rate. That margin, that savings per month, you need to divide it by your closing cost. What's your closing period? That you're not breaking, even if you get this awesome 4% interest rate and you save $400 a month, you're still in for the closing cost. You need to calculate your break-even period. That's going to be at least a couple of years. So don't refi thinking that you're in black, so to speak, accounting terms. Immediately, you're still in the red for the first several couple of years. So
absolutely. And if I learned something, like not predicting anything, but if I learned something in this country, then I would Google what happens to the mortgage interest rates right before the elections every 4 years.
I'm telling you, we're going to have very, very low interest rates right before the elections. So the Fed will step in and say he'll stop increasing rates sometime this summer, hopefully June and July, and he'll hold it to plateau it for quite some time, because even if he plateaus, I think inflation will continue to drop. And I think sometime, I don't know if it'll be September or November or January of next year, he will very slowly start easing the interest rates, and we'll bottom interest rates, if I was to predict today, in October of next year, which means obviously we're going to watch the market and advise our clients, but I think we're going to have a big refinance boom next year by October.
Absolutely. Nobody's willing to stay in 7%. After we've seen and remember 2 and 3, we're not going to stay in 7.5% interest rates, which is normal, which is absolutely normal. Believe me, my clients who got their first mortgages at the end of 70s, beginning of 80s, paying between 12 to 18% interest, they laugh at 7.5%.
Yeah,
They do.
Yeah, we talked about this last time. The older our clients, the less scared they are off this interest rate. The younger they are, and their memory only spans back to 2020 and COVID rates. That's anything scares them. But the older our clients and experienced, they're like, "Don't worry about it, David. I'll refinance. This doesn't
Absolutely.
scare me." Yeah,
I think that if you're scared, if like a lot of times when you're scared, you're too fixed in like looking into one point.
yeah,
And the best thing that I would say is that zoom out, zoom out, look at a decade, look at 25 years, look at the
yeah.
last 50 years, look at the last 100 years, you know, and look at the mortgage interest rates, look at the inflation rates, look at the housing appreciation. And those three factors will actually, if you can correlate them, if you can find the, like the focal point where they touch, you will learn a lot. There's a lot of information out there, like just like get a good advisor. We're always here to help. We're always here to share with you. If we need to sit down and break it down with you on a piece of paper, David and I are always happy to do so. We're here to educate, we're here to help, and we're here to actually walk you guys. Like David said, we're going to hold your hands through the process. And it doesn't matter. Like, not everybody's going to buy, not everybody's going to feel comfortable in this at this time to buy a property. That is fine, but it doesn't mean that we're not going to sit down with you and have a conversation. We still will. We still will, because the information that we're sharing, it comes from the heart, and it comes with the idea in mind that everybody should be a homeowner and everybody should be saving for the wealth for their families.
I agree. It was a quick hour, wasn't it?
It was, and thank you so much, David, for giving us your time, giving us your expertise, and always giving your best to everybody who comes to your office or picks up the phone. We really appreciate you and your entire team. Thank you, guys, and we're looking forward to the next Wednesday. If anybody has any question in mind or needs to have a certain topic discussed, we would love to, guys. Please comment below, like leave the comments under the video, DM me, DM David. Our information is in the description to this video, and we're looking forward to hearing more of your questions and to responding to them.
Thanks, Alexandra. I appreciate you very much.
Thank you, David. Have a great day.
You as well. Bye-bye.
Bye.